Thanks for tuning into our podcast. We love having you here, and it's our mission to bring you all the latest and greatest tips, skills, and know-how to make you the best that you can be. We know that you have it in you, and we're going to show you how. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to the latest edition of the See You Next Tuesday podcast. In today's podcast, you will hear James and myself. I am Trevor, your co-host, exploring issues such as, is there a happy medium between making money and doing what you love? Or is it an either or can it be a both and? And we will also explore some borderline woo-woo things like following the inner nudges. Can that work? How can you do it? Just listen in and tell us what you think. We want feedback. We want to know. Here we go.
Well, next time, charge your phone and we're using the dang conference line. I've never had any problems. Dial the phone number, press record, and it goes.
It's a shame WhatsApp won't record because we could make that one work. But anyway, there we are. We're recording something in case anybody ever in the whole future history of the world wants to listen to our ramblings.
I don't think anyone hates themselves that much.
Yeah.
You should hope not.
Yeah, they would need... actually, if they did, they would need our help. That's the irony of the whole thing. So
it works out. If you're listening to this, then you need our help more than anything. Clearly,
yeah. Which reminds me, at the end of last week's podcast, you said that people could get a free session if they went to coachcomeback.com/garden party. But I haven't checked to see whether that page exists yet. So anybody checking, obviously anybody listening will be listening in what is currently our future. So by then, hopefully it will exist. As of this moment, I suspected.
As of this moment, in preparation for this call, when I was putting down notes in my notes I have right here on the screen, I put reminder to set up link coachcomeback.com /?, because I did not remember what I said the link was in the previous podcast.
Well, fortunately, I listened to it again. And that's what it was. I had an inkling that would happen. I just thought, you won't remember that. I bet he's not writing it down.
So garden party, I'm going to note that down right now.
Yeah.
The made-up link
that
I made up. What was the significance? Why did I make it called garden party?
Because you volunteered, both of us, to offer a free session to anybody who, having listened to this, will, of course, lose their sanity and therefore need our help, coaching.
What was the connection to garden party? Why did I do
I have no idea. You made it up on the fly.
That doesn't sound like me.
I can play it back to you and prove it. And it does sound like you. It's your voice.
Well, we're supposed to
or a very good impersonator.
Supposed to recap anyway. What was I talking about? I always make the links relevant to...
Well, I don't know. Even at the time, I remember thinking, I don't know quite why we came
Oh, yes,
up with
yes,
that.
yes. Oh, I remember now. You were telling the story about the guy that you spoke to on one of those sessions. That's why. The guy that you spoke
Oh, yes,
to,
that's right. The lawn expert.
Yeah, that you gave one session to and turned his whole business idea.
Well, I ended up giving him more than one session, but that was the first one, and it transformed everything, yeah.
And he was into lawn care. That's what it was. Okay.
Well, he was he was a greenkeeper, and he thought there was no market online for what he did. And I said, well, what about gardens? And he said, I'm not a gardener. And I said, no, but grass, lawns. And, yeah.
Okay. Now,
like a few million of those around.
Now it is anchored. Now I will remember the link, and
there you
definitely
go.
at some point in the future, that link will be set up and live for sure.
At some point in the future. So, any time travelers out there, come back to today Somebody on our one of our chat show guests on TV a week or two ago was like just before Christmas was saying that he saw a meme online with what was he called, the Christopher Lloyd character from Back to the Future. What was he called? What was he called? Doc something.
Oh, Doc.
From Back to the Future.
Yeah, Doc.
Yeah, and he's there's just him and Marty McFly, in the DeLorean, and the caption is, "Marty, whatever you do, don't set it for 2020."
Pretty darn accurate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although this one isn't starting off much better so far, it's only starting off good with optimism is the only proof that there's a chance it's going to be better.
I know, that's all we've got. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so
still yet to be seen.
We've just got into our third lockdown as of yesterday. And they're telling us it won't be reviewed. Or they're not saying it won't be. That's my way of saying it. They're saying it will be reviewed on February 15th. So that's Valentine's Day, Scuppered, isn't it? Yeah. So that's just the review. That's not a guarantee they're going to lift it. So, but man, there's a lot of people dying. It's as of today, I've just watched a press conference on our TV. The statistics are that 2% of our population has the virus. 2%. That's 1 in 50 people. And I mean, back in October. So how long ago is that? October, November, December. Just over 3 months ago, it was 1 in 900 people. Wow. So, yeah. So you can imagine they cannot leave that alone, because if that doubles, then it's 4%, then 8%, 16, 32. I mean, it's doom, isn't it?
Yeah.
They obviously have to stamp on that very, very fast. 2% of the population is really scary. Anyway, we shouldn't be starting this off with doom and gloom. I guess we should be upbeat, positive, and doing people's mental health a lot of good.
Yeah, we've already established at this point that if they're listening to this, it is not
not in their best interest.
Mental health at all. So they've either
should come with a health warning.
But yeah, either they would have accepted it by now, or they've been long gone already. So
yeah, that's always a possibility, I suppose.
I don't think we need to worry about that. Well, right then. So I figured instead of, as we were talking about before, trying to come up with topics to discuss and making it sound all stilted and forced, like we're talking at people, which is what we both are trying to prevent if they listen to the previous really, really good one. I said that most of our golden conversations that I want to record are usually the best because that we're not recording and it's organic. And that once we start going into, okay, here's what we're going to teach you today, it changes. Yeah. It feels a little stilted. So again, the warning, if people are listening to this, these are not planned or scripted. They came from our organic brainstorming sessions, wishing I could record them. So instead, I'm just going to use these as getting myself free coaching sessions from you, because I know how expensive you are. I can't afford you anymore, so I'm going to use these calls to just ask you questions that I would normally be asking you for help with. And
so that people who may avail themselves of the free coaching session on coachcomeback.com/garden party will have some idea what they may be in for. I mean, this is not, the kind of publicity I was seeking, James, I have to be honest, but, okay, all right, I've been sucked into it now, so go on then.
Yeah.
What do you want to know?
Good questions. Well, I'll just think about stuff that I'm working on right now, as always, and questions I would normally ask you with that I've been asking you for the last 5 years.
Oh, that question.
So, one of them that we have discussed.
It's not the meaning of life question again, is it?
Now this one's where do babies come from? Still working on that one.
I don't know the answer. I've never figured that out.
So the main question that is on my mind is something I would normally question you if this was a normal phone call, which we're pretending it is. I would be asking you, what say you to someone who has tons of interest at the same time, working on lots of different projects at once, but getting none of them done efficiently or thoroughly or even all the way to completion because of working on, I don't even want to say it's the old cliche shiny object syndrome, because it's not that. Shiny object syndrome is, the seeing every new product and buying every new thing and trying that out for a week until the next product or method or gimmick comes out and never even finishing it. Now, my issue, my friend's issue,
Asking for a friend, yeah.
This friend that I have, who maybe much like anyone who's listening, is kind of been doing this for a while. You understand marketing, online business, or what it is that you want to do, but you just have lots of different ideas of different projects that you're interested in, and both of them are probably dang near, or not both of them, there's about 5 of them, all seem like they're full-time endeavors on their own, yet this friend keeps dabbling a little in all of them and getting none of them done.
Right. So I'm not hearing the problem. What is the problem with that?
Making it take too long. Nothing's getting done efficiently.
Okay. So the problem as defined by your imaginary friend, your friend.
Yes.
I had one of those. Is that things don't get done to completion?
Wait, this might be for the PM show. Late night.
Really?
Wait, what are we talking about?
Well, what are you talking about? What is your friend talking about? Okay, so let me play back to you how I heard the question. Okay, so I am a person with multiple talents and interests, and I want to do all of them, but the problem is none of them get done to completion because I keep dabbling in all of them, and there isn't time to do any one to completion if I dabble in all of them. Is that right? Okay.
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of. So the way I then summarize that question in my own head is, well, then the problem as you're presenting it to me is that not seeing something through to completion is problematic. The dabbling isn't problematic in itself, is it? Because it's just, I get to play with all my toys. Right? So if you had, I don't know, if you were a toddler and you had what do toddlers have, a choo-choo train and some building blocks and a rattle, I don't know what toddlers have. I don't know. Sometimes I come up with these brilliant metaphors and then wish I hadn't started down that road. So let's just keep it to those 3 because I can't think of any more toddler toys off the top of my head, right? Okay. It's not like someone is saying, right, okay, you can only play with the choo-choo train and I'm taking the bricks and the rattle away. It's like saying, right, here's your box of toys. You have freedom to play with all of them, one of them, some of them, as often and in whatever sequence or combination you like, right? So it's not like somebody is saying you can only play with one toy. And you must choose one, because if you don't choose one, then you can't have any of them. Or that, I don't know quite what the consequence of not choosing one is. But the problem as you're defining it seems to be, I have to choose something that I will be satisfied with enough to want to see through to completion and at the same time not regret deleting or skipping or ignoring the others?
Possibly, yes.
So my question is, why is that a problem? Why does something have to be completed? Why can't it just be dabbled with, or in, whatever the adverb is?
Well, because you want some sort of end result, and possibly, I'm going to say, throw this out on a limb, just because I do still want to make this sort of relevant or helpful to others. Let's just say the end result is tied to making income. Then that throws a whole different spin on it. If you never finish any of them, then no income comes.
Right. Okay. So it's not the end result is tied to making income. The end result would be making income. So now you're changing the game, because if you change the game and say, right, okay, so I've got all these interests, and I want to make income from something that interests me, which is fair enough. And now you're saying, but they're all of equal interest. So now I'm going to come up with a different metaphor now. So let's say I don't
have a baby rattle anymore.
No, let's not have it. Let's have food, right? So I've got chocolate cake, food, or you'll relate to that. I've got chocolate cake, I've got pizza, I've got, I don't know, bean burger, you know, and I've got eggs. Of course, I have to have eggs. This whole buffet of stuff, of things that are delicious to me. But now I want to know which one of them is most likely or most enjoyable. I don't know which you're asking. If I just choose one and I've got to follow it through to some kind of completion so that it makes me money. Because I think that's actually where the sticking point or the stumbling block is. Because if you're kind of saying, okay, let me tell you a true story here.
Okay.
Years ago, I had a friend who's sadly no longer with us, who was also multi-talented. He was, in fact, of all the things that he ever touched, he was somewhere between really good and excellent at all of them. He could play the piano to not a world-class standard, but to a good enough standard to you know, sit in a pub or at a party and entertain people for a whole evening. He could play anything from Bach's Toccata and Fugue to he did a pretty good version of the Stripper, I remember, on the piano as well. He could dance brilliantly. He could solve complex crossword puzzles. He was really good at card games. On and on and on and on. And he would just and he had a job as well, which paid him, and he was really good at that as well. But he was his name was Alan, and Alan would he would just have a go at things because they took his fancy, right? And I remember going around to his home, him and his girlfriend. They kind of had open house, just pop in anytime kind of thing. And I used to go around there quite a lot at weekends. So I went around one Sunday, I remember, and he said, our furniture, the armchair in our lounge was getting a bit threadbare, and he said, so we decided we needed a new armchair, and he said, and I just thought, well, rather than buy one, I wonder if I could make one. So he had simply gone out. He'd simply gone out. He'd sat down with a pen and paper, or pencil and paper, and drawn out what an armchair would need, and then he and his girlfriend had gone out to a DIY store, and they bought themselves, he did the shopping, but he bought foam to make cushions, and he bought wood, and I think he probably already had the tools, and he made an armchair. He created out of his head. He made an armchair. I mean, he'd never ever done anything like that before. And then and for years that armchair may still be around for all I know, because his son will have it now. And then another time I went round there, and with that success, he'd made himself out of wood a mantelpiece, you know, an entire thing to go around the fire. Another time he made banisters for the stairs. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it never occurred to him that he wouldn't be able to do it, right? But the point of the story is that one day, I was, I'm going back to the mid '80s, a long time ago, and the early years of my career, and I was just, or I did just buy my first home, my first mortgage, basically, and I needed furniture, and you know what it's like when you're young and you move a house or you're buying a house. Friends kindly offer you, secondhand stuff, and somebody did give me a bed. The problem was that the house, or it was actually a flat that you'd call an apartment that I bought, which was an upstairs thing in a converted house, and the house had a stairway with a twist in it, so we could get the mattress up the stairs, but not the bedstead. So for the first few months that I lived in that property, I just slept on a mattress on the floor because we couldn't get the bed in the house. We had to dump it. So one day I was around Alan's house and I said to him, hey, I said, I have an idea. You make furniture and I need a bed. How much would you charge me to make me a bed? Because I thought then you could build it in situ. It doesn't have to go up the stairs, see? And he thought about it for a moment and he said, no, I won't do it. He said, I'll show you how to do it if you want to get the materials. And, I said, I'll show you how to do it, but I won't do it. He said, because it wouldn't be fun. He said, I just had this idea, however long ago it was by then, that I could make myself an armchair, and making it was fun. And I did it for me. I didn't care about how long it took. It didn't actually take him long. He did it in a weekend, but he said I didn't care about how long it took. I didn't. It was just fun. It was something to play with. It was a toy. But if I start taking commissions, even if it's just you, he said, then it'll be, there'll be obligations. It won't be fun anymore. So it was kind of a long-winded story, I guess. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think that when you throw money into the equation, I got all these things that I love doing, I want to make money from one or some of them, you immediately contaminate that. It doesn't mean that you can't or you shouldn't, but it's no longer the same. And I think that probably needs acknowledging. It's like, instead of asking, how can I make money from it? Maybe it would be more helpful to ask, would I still enjoy doing X if it was for the purpose of making money? Because I don't think you can tack on money to the result. I think money becomes the result. Does that make sense? Does that help?
That is interesting. Well, because that was going to be the next obvious question is, where is the happy medium between that very thing then that many have? Because lots of people tend to go to one or the other. It's either they're doing something that they don't like just for the money, or they're doing something they do love and they're getting nothing from it. But I think everybody wants that also coveted. I mean, that's why Tim Ferriss,
The problem
was that finding that passion. Yeah, we're going to find the middle. Lots of people want to be able to make money from their passion. So exactly, do you combine the two then?
Okay. I suspect that the problem with this is that it doesn't work like that. I don't know if there is a middle ground, because just like at the beginning of this conversation, you were saying, we just have these organic conversations, we just let them grow and the gold kind of comes out, right? I'm just checking in with myself to see if I think I'm wrong. And there may be exceptions, but I think generally what I'm about to say is probably not wrong. But let me see what you think. So again, shorter anecdote this time. Many years ago, I was driving, listening to the radio, and Paul McCartney was being interviewed because he and his then band, which I think was probably Wings, had just released another album, and they were going on a world tour with it. And the interviewer said to Paul McCartney, you're in your 50s now, or whatever it was, 50 something, I think he was. And another new album. He said, why do you keep doing it? He said, world tours must be exhausting. You surely don't need the money. And McCartney said, I've never done it for the money. Right? And I think that answer was just, that nailed it. He'd never done it for the money. When he and John Lennon got together, they was just basically kids. They started writing songs. They didn't know it was going to lead to everything that it became. How could they? The money comes organically out of the joy and the fun and the doing what they want to do. They don't chase the money. The money is a byproduct of giving people joy or giving people value. So with that premise, maybe edict, I was going to say, maybe the question, or a better question might be, is there something that I would enjoy doing that I could do for people? So if it was writing so that people can, I will actually write books or short stories or, whatever it is, whatever format you want, in a way that people can read it. I will get it out there. So there will have to be that completion thing, but that I don't care if it makes money or not, because I just love doing it. Is that possible?
Yeah.
For your friend.
I think that's a good question for him or her,
whoever it is,
to consider. There's lots of good ideas and stuff in there, and I think about, what about a divine intervention? Now we get into a whole different category where people feel like, then I just need to sit and wait for the inspiration. When you hear stories like, Amazon, who started out as just selling books or used books, or the story of AirBNB. Do you know the story of AirBNB? How they started?
No, I don't know the background of that one. No.
Well, I'll give the short version of it because we're all about brevity here in our stories.
Sure, I am anyway.
Well, the short version of AirBNB, from what I recall, and I may have half these dates and facts wrong, but the premise will still be right, which is they were some guys living in an apartment or small flat somewhere. I want to say San Francisco, not important, but there was some big convention that was supposedly going on in town, and all the hotels and everything were booked up.
Right.
And it wasn't like they had a huge place, if I recall right, which is why it led to this. Was they were passing by people, I guess, were all over town. He was like, where's everybody here? Where are they going? They want to go to this convention, but there's nowhere to, everything is all booked up, there's nowhere to stay. And he had the idea of offering literally an air mattress. They didn't have any spare bedrooms in their place, but he's like, what if you just need somewhere to sleep for the night? We can get an air mattress, put it on the floor, in the living room, and you could have somewhere to sleep in our place. And we'll make, made them breakfast and everything in the morning.
Right.
So it literally was called Airbed and Breakfast.
Oh, okay.
Airbed and
Breakfast.
Yeah, literally the bed and breakfast.
Because I thought it was to do with flight, but okay, Airbed. Okay, that's nice.
It was Airbed and Breakfast because they slept on an airbed, an air mattress.
I did not know that story. That's great.
Actually literal. People were renting out air mattress spaces in their living rooms for people to sleep on, because all they really needed was they didn't care about how fancy the hotel or anything. They just wanted somewhere to sleep so they could go to the dang convention. And of course, now we know how huge the mogul Airbnb turned into off. I guess that's more of a seeing an opportunity that came to you and having the insight to fulfill a need. And I don't even know if there was even desire or anything even crossed into that one. That one was more if they saw an opportunity or a desire or a need and filled it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just widen this out a little bit, because what's going through my head, a couple of things going through my head. One is about, I want to put this one out there so I don't forget it, and I want to park it and come back to it. So the first thing is about asking the question, what do I want to do? Let's park that one, but I've said it out loud now, so if I don't circle back to it, please remind me. And the second is just what was flashing through my head was the number of times I have heard famous actors interviewed on chat shows when they've been asked by the host, how did you kind of manage to walk this path, this incredible? I remember Judi Dench was one of them. Dame Judi Dench, who's been M in the Bond movies, amongst many other things, and the answer is always basically, and she said something like, "I never had a plan." It's only retrospectively that you can see, oh gosh, that led to that, and that led to that, and that led to that. And I think that it doesn't mean that I know that for every famous or successful actor, singer, artiste of any kind, there are thousands who aspire and fall by the wayside. So I'm not saying that is necessarily the formula to follow, but I am saying that it happens organically. And the reason I wanted to circle back to the question, which I'm pretty sure that you did say, because I've heard you say it before, about the same friend, I suspect, is what do I want to do? Or how do I decide what to do?
Yeah.
And I wonder what would happen if the question was slightly rephrased as, who or even how do you want to be?
Can you give an example?
Well, yeah.
That question in action.
Okay, so I might say, if you ask me that question, I might say, I want to be someone who makes a positive difference to people's lives. Because that precedes the question, what do you want to do? Because then the next question may well be, well, how do you intend to do that? To which my answer might well be, I don't know, I've got loads of ideas. I want to write books. I like producing, I like being on stage and doing workshops and live presentations and that kind of thing. There's lots of ways I could do that. And I feel that I could do that with my my psychotherapy background and my coaching skills, and the fact that I talk too much is probably quite helpful, because I don't actually know if people are really listening to me or not, but it feels nice. I don't know. But you see what I mean? It's not about, because the question, what do you have to do? What do I want to do? Seems to me that it implies, in order to answer it, it's, no matter what the answer is, it's going to impose limitation. It's going to, by including something, it's going to exclude everything else. And maybe that's not the right way to approach that. Let's pretend that this friend is you. I know it's kind of ridiculous, but if it was you, you've got all these, I know, you've got all these multiple interests, talents, skills, burning ambitions, things you want to do, on the bucket list. And I still want to say, well, what is the problem with just doing them all? Maybe you can't do them all simultaneously, but what if you just had that as the, can't call it a goal. I don't like goals. Really. The more I think about goals, the more I dislike them. But as a dream, as an ambition.
Perfect for the timing right now. You could refer to it as something even more cliche than a goal. You can call it a resolution.
Yeah, except those don't have a very good reputation generally, do they?
No, they don't work.
They don't. Well, people don't work them. No.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I would. Yeah. What should I do? Or what do I want to do?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fine. Is limiting. That's the problem with that question. It is exclusive, literally. So if you said, well, you know, I want to write books, I want to be a comedian, I want to be a coach, I want to whatever, you know, and I said, or the advice was, write books, then immediately you're going to go, but what about being a coach, and what about being a comedian? And okay, be a comedian then. But then I want to write books and be a, you know, you can't. That question is always going to leave you or the friend frustrated and disappointed. It can't lead to a place of expansiveness, which is what you want. Right. So I think it's like, how can I be someone who includes all those things? And maybe there's a way of merging them all. And I don't know the answer to that. And I don't expect you or the friend to know the answer to that. But what I do know is, if you kind of set the intention, I know what I was thinking of as well. Sorry, I'm jumping around. Michael Neal has a fantastic concept, which applies to anywhere. I keep thinking about it. So like, oh yeah, I could do that with, and he calls it before the therefore. Right. So, on a grand scale, if you take, you know, like paradigms about life, the universe, and everything. For example, long ago in prehistoric times, people would have, and they still do this, by the way, but you know, let's assume that people, we imagine, would have in those days kind of gone, they'd have been asking the question, wow, all this is here, you know, there's the sun and the moon and the stars and the weather and we're here, and animals and food, and that's before the therefore, right? And then the next thing is, well, and we don't know how any of it got here, therefore there's God, or therefore there are many gods, or therefore all of those beliefs come after the therefore. See? So, and you can do that with anything. It's like, so if we split your question and say, right, okay, so here is a person, which may or may not be your good self, who has multiple interests, multiple skills, multiple talents, multiple dreams and ambitions and desires that burn with equal amounts of heat and light, let's say. Right?
Yeah.
That's before the therefore. That just is. That's not arguable. That's not debatable. That just is. Right. And where you're going with it, when you know, from the beginning of this conversation, is therefore I can't do them all. Well, who says? Where does that belief come from? Is that really true? I don't know. I'm just challenging it, because I think that's where the challenge needs to be directed. Because if it directed at, well, why don't you do A? And then you say, well, what about B, C, and D? Well, I'll do B then. No, what about A, C, and D? I mean, there's never an end to that particular debate.
Right. Yeah, and something you just made me think of, you were talking about intention earlier, and I didn't know this was where this was going to go. When you spoke on it a little bit, it somehow made me think of my real estate journey. Whereas, if anyone knows or have seen any of my trainings or webinars or whatever, at realestatecpr.com, throw that in there. One of the stories I tell is, and of course, the brevity version, full version is at realestatecpr.com. Real estate CPR, the letter CPR.com.
Yes. It's a CPR, by the way.
It is CPR, I believe, like the whole Red Cross.
Really?
Thing,
As
like
in
emergency help, real estate.
As in Charlie Papa Romeo CPR. I don't want anybody to get the letters wrong.
Perfection. Well, I tell the story of briefly of how I got my start into real estate. Well, one of the many starts was I knew a method. I learned a method, and that's the method I was doing, which was basically getting a loan, getting a home, buying a loan, getting a loan to buy a house cheap, with enough to do the rehab, putting in the rehab, and then getting another loan called a HELOC, home equity line of credit, to pull out the future potential equity of the home, take that money out again, because you could get up to 70-75% of the value once you rehabbed it without having to sell it. The bank would just give you the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll turn around and buy 2 or 3 more and just keep repeating that. So by the end of buying 5 properties, it comes out to about at least 10 different loans or applications or applying on your credit. So you did everything on credit. So you weren't, what do you call it? You weren't liquid. They weren't liquid assets, but on paper was worth a lot. But everything was done due to my stellar E1 credit. I could just walk into banks and they would just throw money at me. Here you go buy some more. Look at your track history. Credit is good. You always pay. Take our money. Keep investing. Keep doing it. So then once the crash happened, the whole real estate market boom, and lost quite a few of the properties that weren't leveraged properly, and whatever else happened during the crash, everyone lost their equity and lost the value in them. And I started losing a few of them due to my own fault, actually, because the method that still works. But that's a much longer story that I said I'd tell, how basically lost them all. So at the end of the crash and end of it all, and losing most of my properties, that method was no longer an option. I didn't even know of any option, any kind of solution, or how to. I just knew I still wanted to invest, but this time I couldn't use my own money and I couldn't use my credit.
Okay.
And which was how I had done all of them, which usually where most people, it's, they try something, they fail, they learn one way to do it, it doesn't work for them, and they're like, well, crap, I guess I can't invest anymore because my credit is bad and I don't have any money to invest. This is a thought for a lot of people in a lot of industries. Maybe it's slightly different for marketing or whatever, but maybe try something, fail at it, or you have something and lose it is more accurate. Something that was working at first and then all of a sudden it stops working. And it seems like there's that piece of intention and desire. I think maybe it's those two that we're talking about: intention, desire, and just taking action even before you even know what it is. But I knew I still wanted to be in real estate, and I knew I couldn't do it the way that I used to anymore. And that's how I was kind of led to discovering the methods I use now, which don't require you to use any of your own money, or it doesn't matter what your credit looks like, and not possible for you to lose any money. I had found, the funny thing is, this was probably at least 6 or 7 years later. My business partners, whoever, had went on a seminar somewhere learning real estate where they paid for this program. He went live and had the old DVDs. This is after I had my old videotape things, but he had the DVDs, whatever, on this training about this method called wholesaling and flipping. And in my mind at the time, I just assumed wholesaling. You know, I thought about retail, and you know, because I worked in retail when I was a teenager. And you think of wholesale as basically buying in bulk at wholesale prices. You know, you think, oh, you're gonna wholesale houses. I'm thinking, I'd heard of people buying blocks of like 10 houses at once.
That's where the word comes from. You buy the whole case of things and then sell the individual items. It's the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I never even looked at it. I had these DVDs and I thought, well, this is way beyond. This is when I start getting into doing multi-million-dollar big deals. So I'm not even going to touch that. And I sat on that for years. He paid for these trainings years and gave them to me because he said he thought I would be doing it because I was more involved. And it wasn't until this moment of having absolutely nothing and nowhere to go, just the desire to still be in real estate and wanting, because I had the idea occurred to me, I might as well watch those trainings and see what they were teaching.
Yeah.
And it was, I wonder if I even still have them. I probably do. Or they're in one of the many states I've lived, storage locker somewhere. But so anyway,
go.
Watched this training, and wholesaling had nothing to do with buying large properties in bulk with tons of money. It was some sort of a method that you could buy, sell, and flip properties without using any of your own money, your own credit, anything. Didn't matter where you were living. You didn't even have to look at the properties. And I was like, this is just unheard of compared to the way I've been doing my investing the entire time. I didn't even know such a thing even existed or was even possible. But at the time, I didn't have a choice because the way I was doing it in the past was no longer even an option. And some kind of way I was led to just, kept trying instead of just giving up and going, this doesn't work. There's something there that I'm sure you can articulate better than I that led to just not giving up and having the desire to still figure out.
Well, it's an interest. I mean, I don't know if I can articulate it better than you or anybody else, but I'll articulate it the best way I know how. And the phrase that I want to capture, like pulling a bubble out of the air, is it occurred to me. It occurred to me to watch those DVDs. Now, I can't tell you literally or figuratively the number of times in my life that things have worked out or problems have been solved or based on something just occurred to me. Because usually we tune that out or we reject it. Yeah, that one, yeah. Why on that occasion when you'd ignored those DVDs all those times, it's like, maybe I should watch them. And you did. What was the difference between that final time and all the previous times when you go, nah, wholesale, nah, right? Something, and I can't explain that. I can, oh man, there's just so many stories. Oh, I don't want to go into another long story because I'm aware of time. But I after my first marriage broke up, when I look back on what happened, I thought I couldn't afford the mortgage, the house. I didn't think of it as a home anymore after that. But the house that I was living in kept me dry at night. I couldn't afford it. The mortgage was massive, and it was supposed to be joint. And she's just stopped paying for it. She just left and stopped paying for it. And I was sure that I was going to have to, it would be repossessed. I was resigned to that, really. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wasn't exactly looking forward to it. But I just decided to be, I'll be all right. They're friends with sofas if I need them. I'm not going to, I won't end up on the streets. And a few months went by, I'm trying to put the pieces together with this. A guy knocked at the door one evening. It was in November. It was cold. was dark because it gets dark, 4:00 in the afternoon. And he was an ex-neighbor. He's much younger than me. And he was young, married. I don't know if he was that much younger than me at the time, thinking about it. It's quite a long time ago. It probably wasn't, probably about my age at the time. I'm just thinking back on it, it's just a young guy. I'm old now. But they'd recently had their second child, whom they had discovered a few weeks after I think it was a boy, his birth, I think, was severely disabled. And he couldn't cope with it, he couldn't handle it. And his coping mechanism was to get drunk, which has never been my coping mechanism. I don't mind a drink, but getting drunk, it just makes me ill. I don't like it. And he came round to my home, the one and only time where I'd moved to, the house that we'd bought together with my first wife, was around the corner from the little apartment that we had together. Mm-hmm. So it was a 5-minute walk for him. But this guy never called on me. We'd played squash a couple of times while we were neighbors. He thrashed me, so obviously I hated him. But other than that, we didn't know each other, and we were polar opposites in the way that we handled life. And anyway, but he just knocked at the door, and it was like, Trev, do you fancy a pint? Now, this was a Wednesday night, something like that. I was completely broke. I mean, I told you I couldn't afford the mortgage, but it was like every single penny was like, I've got that to pay the electricity, and I need this for food, and I think I still had a cat who still needed feeding, etc. So every penny was like, accounted for, and I couldn't afford beer, and I definitely knew I couldn't afford beer at the rate that he would drink it. So, but I didn't want to reject him either, right? So I said to him, well, look, I will come with you for a pint, but let's buy our own, because, I'm on my own here. I just explained it to him. I said, I won't keep pace with you anyway. You can drink. Anyway, okay, fine. So I'm telling you the story because at each little point, I want you to get, it occurred to me to do that. Right. My instinct was to say, no, I'm sorry. But I didn't want to do that because he was a guy in need, and I knew that he wouldn't have turned up. He wasn't going to cry on my shoulder. He just wanted someone to get drunk with. That's all he wanted. He wasn't going to talk about what was going on. He did mention the baby, but then he was like, but I just wanted a night out with the boys kind of thing. And this was a tiny little town that we lived in. Nothing happened on a Wednesday night in this town. And the pub was 15 minutes walk away. So we walked, freezing cold night, went to the pub. I bought my pint. He bought his first one. And it's a big pub. And on a Friday night or a Saturday night, that pub was heaving because in those days, all the young teenagers or, the youngsters from the town would go, it was one of the pubs they'd go into before going to the nightclub, which was across the road. But on a Wednesday, there was nobody, right? There were like 3 other people in there. And my friend starts ogling the barmaid. Right, and it nudges me. Oh, she's a bit of all right. See, and I was a bit uncomfortable with that because he was married. I wasn't interested. I just was still. I'm going through a breakup of marriage. Like, yeah, okay, yes, she's a nice-looking girl, but I don't care about that. And at that moment, the door of the pub. We were sitting quite near the door, and the door opened, and a guy I had never seen in my life before walked in, looked at my companion, and went, hey, how are you? And my friend stood up and they gave each other, a man hug. I was like, oh, I don't know who this guy is. So now I'm feeling like, the outsider. And it turned out that the guy who had walked in was an old school friend of my companion. They hadn't seen each other for something like 15 years until that moment. So just get the kind of coincidences going on here. And then, but of course, the guy hadn't walked in expecting to see his old schoolmate. He walked in because he happened to be the boyfriend of the attractive barmaid. Right? And so he sort of explained that. Said, oh, it's my girlfriend over there. And and he went off to start chatting with her. And she, seeing that the pub was empty, asked her boss if she could come round to the customer side of the bar so that she could talk to her boyfriend, right? Which then enabled me and my companion to get up and join them. And so we all ended up standing in the middle of this empty floor of the bar as a foursome. But I didn't say a word because I knew nothing. I had nothing in common with any of them. The two guys knew each other. The guy, the stranger, I think was called John, and the barmaid obviously knew each other. I just stood there nursing my pint and sipping it as slowly as I could, right? Until my friend, who, notwithstanding the fact that he was married or that his ex-school chum was her boyfriend and was now, 3 sheets to the wind because he was on about his 4th or 5th lager, just came out with, the classic drunks chat-up line and said something to her like, well, what are you doing here? You're a very attractive girl. I'm sure you don't want to be working in a bar like this for the rest of your life. Something like that. And she said, well, I'm just waiting to, I'm applying for a job, and I'm waiting for the application to be processed. And it's at a place called Harrow. And my ears pricked up, and Pepper Harrow doesn't exist anymore. But I knew exactly what Pepper Harrow was. And of course, they didn't. And I also know that you don't, because there's no reason why you would. But I was at the time working in the field of adolescent mental health. And Pepper Harrow was a private institution. I worked for the National Health Service, but it was a private institution in London, which I'd never visited, but I knew what it was because it was in the same field. It was for kids with challenging behavior. And so I then said, I know what that is. And it was the first time I'd spoken. And she said, do you? And I said, yeah, it's a private institution for psychiatric mental health for adolescents. And she said, oh, how do you know that? And I said, because that's what I do. I'm a manager of a psychiatric adolescent unit. And she then wanted to talk to me, which was kind of embarrassing because there was my mate trying to chat her up and her boyfriend there. So I was slightly worried about my own, the shape of my nose by the time I got home. But so anyway, what the upshot of that was, but she was basically at work. She was obviously with her boyfriend as well. And I said, look, I probably can help you with the application. And as it happens, what ended up happening was that she ended up working at my place. I gave her a job, but she invited herself round to my house for the following evening. And when she came round, which was purely platonic discussion, I wasn't going to muscle in on that operation. I had no intention anyway at that time. But she sat on my sofa, which happened to be in front of a radiator. Now, I know you live in California. You probably don't even know what radiators are, but, we need them in England. And she kind of hugged this radiator. And we were talking about, the work thing. And she said, you've got radiators. And I said, well, yeah, this is... It's not that uncommon in this day and age. And she went, no, she said, but I live in an icebox. I rent a room in a house, got no heater in it. And it's freezing, right? And she, by then, realized, I understood my situation, that, my wife had gone. And she said, don't want to lodge her, do you? And I said, I don't know, never thought about it. I said, well, yeah, I've got a room. Obviously, I said, I've got no furniture, but it has a radiator in it, though. Yeah, she said, no, it's all right, I can get furniture. And she moved in, paid me rent, saved the mortgage. Now, when I think back on that story, that guy, if he turned up on Thursday instead of Wednesday, I don't think that would have happened. If the guy who was his ex-school friend hadn't, but it occurred to me to go with him. It occurred to me to say, I know what Pepper Harrow is. It occurred to me to say, come round tomorrow night. If it had been the summer, not the winter, the radiators wouldn't have mattered.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just think that when we follow the breadcrumbs in that kind of a way, Mike Dooley has a lovely metaphor with sat-nav, GPS, that if you can get in the car and you can program your satellite navigation system for a destination you have no idea how to get to. And as long as you put the right coordinates in, it will take you there. All you've got to do is drive the car and follow the instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have that too. I think we need to learn to listen to that and follow the instructions more.
Yeah, so not to get all woo woo again. Actually, let me just back that up. A lot of our background is very much belief in the woo woo non-existent. So I probably should stop saying that, because I have a feeling it's a reoccurring theme that's probably going to come up a lot in our future calls that anyone may be listening to, because you and I are both big believers in what happens out of the physical is sometimes, or most of the time, more important than what does. So you could just call it mindset, positive thinking, whatever, God, universe, supreme being, inner knowing, insight, inspiration, those gentle nudges you get. Intuition is one that's more commonly known, so that'll make it less woo-woo if we just say intuition. But I think we've all felt that at a time where you've got a gentle nudge into something. The problem is we don't always listen to it. Like there might be a gentle nudge right now saying, what's the worst that could happen? Sign up for coachcomeback.com/garden party and get on the phone with one of these guys.
Yeah.
What fear may be holding you back? I know when I was struggling and starting out in the beginning, I saw people doing calls that I wanted to get on, and I have a story about that. So make note for me to remind you about the story of the first time I ever did one of these, did a call with a mentor, because it actually did change my life. One call, I did one, and it changed my life. So I want to tell that story in the next one. So remind me, because this isn't even made up or any kind of story. I literally did one of these calls with one of these air quote sarcastically gurus, and it actually did change everything for me yet again. But I know in the beginning I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of those, and I always thought, I'm not ready for that, or I'm not good enough. Why would they want to talk to me? Nothing's going to happen. And I just fearfully just thought, why would they even talk to me? Nothing's going to happen, and would not even call them until one time it occurred to me to take this one call with this one particular guru who has now gone on to like billion-dollar empire. Was actually featured in Inc. magazine and all kinds of stuff now. But I got a free call with this person when they were just starting out, and changed everything for me. So that whole having the intention and having that gentle nudge or something whisper to you, like, just pick up the phone, let's just do it, just sign up for the call or whatever. I think that's a good spot to end, is talking about, I guess, being able to know when to listen to that gentle nudge and taking the action, following into it, and actually how important that is.
Yeah. Can I just say something about the woo-woo and the listening before we do kind of wrap this up, though?
Yep.
Because I don't think it is woo-woo anymore. I think that everyone has that experience. I mean, I think if you start going after the therefore, then it becomes woo-woo. Therefore, there are spirit guides, or therefore, because I don't know if that's true or not. I have no evidence one way or the other that that's true. But again, a Michael Neal quote that I love, and he, I think it's in, I think it might be in his book, The Inside Out Revolution, that he tells the story. I can't remember. But I've heard him tell it, and he basically says that he prefaces it by saying, this sounds like it's going to be a joke even to me, but he was talking to, I think it was a priest, a rabbi, and an atheist. And the discussion was about God. He just listened for a while, and they obviously all had their very different viewpoints. And then they all looked at him and said, Michael, what's your view on this? And his answer was, well, I know I'm not running the show. And I think that's all you need to say. I'm not running the show. I don't even know how to grow my own fingernails. I really don't. They grow, but I don't know how to do it. And I think that I'm not. If we go after the therefore, it becomes woo-woo. Because people will say, well, if there was a God, why does he allow COVID-19 to happen?
Right.
But that's after the therefore. And that's assuming that God, if God exists, then he, she, or it would have this way of looking at the world and this way of treating us or humanity or viruses or that's don't want to go there. But I don't think that the experience of intuition or more and more in my own life I'm coming to I have to remind myself, because I lose it, but to remember when things look problematic or difficult or challenging, to go, hang on a minute, the sat nav will take me there, the GPS will take me there if I just listen and trust it. All I have to do is follow it.